It's entitled My Dad Paddy. I remember watching and admiring this strong, able-bodied man as a young boy growing up in Fairyland. He was fisherman, road builder, mailman, healer, undertaker, counsellor, and an early Mr. Dress-Up, as children seemed attracted to him wherever he went. He was always willing to lend a helping hand and expected nothing in return. Once during grade 9, I decided I had enough education and approached him with the idea of quitting school. We were in cutting firewood at the time, and his advice was that I should try one more year and then decide. That was probably the best advice I ever received in my entire life. My sister Pat and I would listen for hours as he told stories, some true and some far-fetched, of his childhood while growing up in Admiral's Cove. When we meet now, we have fond memories of the many hours spent during our childhood and the many laughs he gave us. He gave us our sex education in a humorous way, as best he knew how, as he related stories of his early pranks. A cut on the finger could be cured by his special prayer, which he passed on to me. I fear my faith was not quite as strong as his, as it has now been lost with time. I remember people coming for miles around, and he could assure them everything would be okay, and sure enough, the bleeding would stop. Work was his life, and I feel this was one of the best characteristics passed on to all the family, both boys and girls. A man who had 3 years of school, became foreman of a road building crew, obtained his driver's license in his 40s, and learned to read after he married Mom, a driving force to us all. The old saying, behind every successful man is a good woman, was very true in our dad's case. I will relate my memories of her later. This man, who I'm proud to call Dad, worked 12 to 18-hour days. He worked from 7 a.m. until 5 p.m. with a horse and box cart, building and repairing roads. This was before all the modern inventions, such as trucks and asphalt plants. For recreation, he spent many a night splitting fish for his friends, an occupation he loved, but he worked with the Department of Highways for a more secure salary. After my brother Ray and I spent leisure time all day, we often complained about working in the gardens. Dad would say, "There's a job to be done, let's get at it." We would reluctantly gather the vegetables and hay, and saw the results in February and March, when we could go to the cellar for a fine feed of turnips and potatoes. Our taxi drivers today take their cars off the road during blizzard conditions. During the cold and wintry weather, Dad would tackle the horse and make several trips to the school to transport the boys and girls to their homes. No pay, just a simple thank you was all he needed. Canada Post would be proud today if they had an employee of his calibre. I remember when he braved the storms of winter to carry the mail from Witless Bay to Cappahayden on horse and slide with no roads ploughed. He would walk ahead to break the trail, and sometimes worked harder than the horse. I have tried to imagine the loneliness he must have felt on these trips, but I never heard him complain, and I can still see the look of pride on his face when he handed Mom the few dollars he received for each trip. There is one story I must relate. After one of these mail trips, the horse was so tired that he fell exhausted in the barn. Dad had Ray and I feed him and give him a rub down. He swore us to secrecy not to tell anyone around for fear he would lose the mail contract. We kept the secret for years. On one of our road trips to cut firewood, I had the unfortunate experience of cutting my back with the axe. I was given a severe tongue lashing in the proper way to carry an axe and how to cut wood. All of this while he was helping me back to the highway on the way to the doctor's office. A few weeks later, we went back to the same area, and during our walk in, Dad continued his lecture on safety. He picked out a small area of spruce and told me to stay and cut it. A few minutes later, I heard his anxious call. I arrived to find he had cut his foot with the axe and was bleeding quite badly. He looked at me with a grin and said, "Now it's your turn," and I proceeded to help him out the trail to the doctor. Although he was in pain, we laughed all the way to the clinic. He was a man who loved children and had a special way with them. Known as Mr. Paddy, he danced with them on his knees, sang and whistled tunes he composed himself. I remember how proud he was to tell us we had a new baby sister when Gloria and Anne-Marie were brought from the cabbage garden, and the proud look on his face when Randy was born. There was a tear in his eye when we buried the twins, and a glow on his face when Marg brought Jackie home from the hospital. I remember how nervous he was during the period Mom had pneumonia and lay close to death for days. He told us to pray and our prayers would be answered, and sure enough they were. There's a tear in my eye as I pen these few memories, but they are tears of happiness and not sadness. Paddy, if you are looking down from above, all is well. Rest in peace. We still love you. We still love and remember you.